So thank you everyone for joining in. Before we begin, let's all take a moment to please close our eyes and take a few deep breaths in and out. Breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the mouth. Breathe in a lot of love, a lot of abundance, a lot of positivity. And breathe out anything that could be blocking the flow of that. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And then return to normal breathing. And in this space, please connect to your highest consciousness. Connect to the radical consciousness. Invoke upon the presence of masters, of healing angels and guides, of radical masters, of Mulch, connect to the prime resource energy. Align to this resource energy. And connect to the Creator and the Creator of creators. And slowly, whenever you're ready, you may open your eyes. Okay, so thank you so much everyone for joining in. Today we have picked up the topic of identity issues or identity crisis. Now, this issue or this crisis can show up in two forms and two extremes, okay? There are some of us who get very attached to certain identities that we have, okay? It could be as simple as the identity of being a mother, or that of being a working woman or a working person, that of being a family person, that of being an independent person. So we all, time and again, we give ourselves tags. We give ourselves these, so to say, identities that this is us, this is me, I am this. And every time we do that, and the more often we say that or do that in our space, there's nothing wrong. But what that does is it kind of creates an identity association for us that this is us. And while there is nothing wrong with that, sometimes when it's time to move from that identity or shift our identity, or we feel that we are changing and we no longer want that role or that tag, it becomes very, very difficult for us to shift or to bring that change in identity, because we have forgotten that it was just one of the many role plays and not our identity. There is a difference in playing a role So yes, we are playing the role of a daughter, of a mother, of a spouse, of a partner, of a friend, of a working person, of an employer, of an employee, of a human being. But at the end of it, these are all role plays. The crisis occurs when there is so much attachment to some or all of the role plays that we start identifying with it completely. And tomorrow, if there is a need to shift, there is a need for change. Like it could be as simple as, the kids growing up and going away. And now the mother has a huge identity crisis because she doesn't know what to do with herself, because that's all that's become her identity. And then you end up feeling lost. You end up feeling completely clueless as to who am I. And then the other extreme of the identity issue is when we have an issue being our authentic self. Now, it could sound counterintuitive because I just said that these are all role plays. So what is our authentic self? Exactly. So our authentic self is everything and anything beyond all the tags and roles we give ourselves. And that authentic self is actually allowed to keep changing over time as well. It's not set in stone. But when we start feeling that this is it, or sometimes we feel that, okay, we want to say a no, but we end up saying a yes. Or we feel that, okay, we are a little too frank, too blunt, and because of that, it creates controversy. So let me, out of a fear of not hurting other people, try and be more docile and gentle. See, it is not the portrayal of the self that is the problem. It is the intent behind the portrayal that actually makes all the difference. When the intent is to run away from what we are authentically feeling and portray so that something doesn't occur, in the intent itself, there is fear. And there is a rejection of our authentic self. And hence, we begin to further have identity issues. So you could be very pleasing to everyone. You could be a perfectly beautiful, nice person, but inside you are just not satisfied because you are not being true to yourself. Yeah, do we understand the two extremes of this identity issues? Like there's one end and then there's the other end. Any questions in this, or anything that's not clear, or anything you want to share about this? Or add something? Or are we good? Okay. All right. So, at the end of it, either way, underlying any identity issue, crisis, whatever you want to call it, whichever extreme we belong to, there is an underlying fear or an attachment, right? So let's begin to work and understand these fears, these attachments. Okay, so firstly, take a moment to close your eyes and identify which of the identity issues are you more likely to be towards. Are you someone who has a problem with being his or her authentic self? Or at the moment, are you feeling too attached or too close to one particular identity which seems to be shifting and you don't know what to do? Okay, so whichever one it is, let's now begin to affirm, I admit my identities under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my identities under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my identities under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my identity crisis under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my identity crisis under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my identity crisis under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my attachment to my identity under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my attachment to my identities under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my attachment to my identities under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my attachment to my identities under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my attachment to my identities under the loving care of radical consciousness. I archive my association of role plays with identity. I archive my association of role plays with identity. I archive my association of role plays with identity. I archive my association of role plays with identity. I archive my association of role plays with identity. I admit my fears of letting go of my identity under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of shifting my identities under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of shifting my identities under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of embracing new role plays under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of embracing new role plays under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of embracing new role plays under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of embracing new role plays under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of being my authentic self. I admit my fear of being my authentic self under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of being my authentic self under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of being my authentic self under the loving care of radical consciousness. I admit my fear of being my authentic self under the loving care of radical consciousness. I archive my adverse associations about being my authentic self. I archive my adverse associations about being my authentic self. I archive my adverse associations about being my authentic self. IR5, my adverse associations about being my authentic self. It is safe to be who I am. It is safe to be who I am and allow a shift to who I am. It is safe to be who I am and allow a transition in who I am. It is safe to be who I am and allow a transition in who I am. It is safe to be who I am and allow a transition in who I am. It is safe to be who I am and allow a transition in who I am. How's everyone feeling? How is the throat pain now, Chandrakala, and the salivating, Swati?
Yeah, it's better.
It's better. Yeah, so just keep saying it is safe to be who I am and allow a transition in who I am. Okay, others, what's happening? Any thought, any feeling? Last statement, it's getting reduced. Yeah. So Chandrakala, keep saying that, please. Yes, Aparna, you've raised your hand.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you speak about shifting identities, I
Yes.
did not understand shifting, because once you told role play and identity, when I understood them both, they're completely different. So identity is my true authentic self. How will it shift? I did not understand that.
Yeah. So, Aparna, what happens is when we look at shifting identity, we are basically kind of talking about role plays itself in the sense, okay,
Okay. Yeah.
but somewhere our identity and what we identify with. So, sometimes we also identify with morals, with principles,
True.
with
Yes.
certain values. Now, tomorrow, if those need to shift a little bit, we have a huge conflict in
Yeah.
that. So though sometimes there is a natural transition, a lot of us, once we are done with that particular value or identification, it's time to shift.
True.
And then we
Yeah.
don't want to, we want to cling on to that, and then there's a huge conflict and there's judgment of self. So that's what I meant, that allow a natural transition to who you
Transition.
are also sometimes when it's required, because we all of us are transitioning at all times.
Yes.
Yeah, does
I
that make
understood that.
oh, yeah,
Beautiful. Thank you.
lovely. Thank you, Aparna. Okay. Yes. Anyone else feeling something, wants to share something?
Yeah, so I would want to share a couple of things.
Yes.
So, as you know, I've been in this journey. So I have had like huge opposition to authority,
Hmm.
and so I was always like a rebel against authority. And now I'm in a position where I should be authority over like bullying. So now I'm working on my associations with authority and trying to be neutral on that.
Exactly.
So that is one thing. And I wanted to ask a question about, let's say in role play.
Hmm.
Similarly, you would want, let's say, maybe I might be wrong. If I have someone in my life who is trying to look up for validation from me,
Hmm.
like I can see that, maybe I can feel that like a person is trying to find a validation through me,
Hmm.
and through that game, I know that I have to play that. If I give that validation,
Hmm.
it's fine, well and flow. But knowing that if I what if I don't want to, like it's okay, I would to be, I can like go with the flow. But what if like going now, maybe like you have told me before, like if you shift from, if you don't resist it, maybe someone else will come in their life to fulfill that role.
Yeah.
So how can I diplomatically, like, is it
So,
knowing the game, would you want, should we flow in that game or should we say
see,
no?
obviously, resisting doesn't really help. It what helps is that why do you have a need somewhere to be the validator for someone? Okay, so you begin to understand your role of playing the validator for someone else. So maybe you've been on the other end of the spectrum for way too long, and this could also just simply be a karmic completion, Swati. Knowing you, I know you've seeked out validation before, and now here is someone who's seeking out validation from you. So, yeah, so maybe it's just a karmic completion that's happening. You've been on the one end, now you need to go on the other end. Let it happen, let it pass. Over time, so you don't have to fan someone's insecurity, neither do you have to indulge someone's insecurity. But if you know you're doing it out of love and it's really not harming you or him, it's okay. One off in a while.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Lovely. All right. Otherwise, everyone's feeling settled. So I'm just going to maybe read out a message maybe for the entire group with respect to identity. Yeah. And let's see if we resonate, how we feel about it. Till then, if you have any questions, please feel free to voice them. How do we handle rejection from others? Perhaps you're quite sensitive to rejection from others. And in order to avoid this rejection, you may be going out of your way, compromising on several occasions, and yet inviting the risk of being rejected in an unexpected and hurtful manner. Today, you're being reminded to heal your past memories of initial or childhood rejection. Recognize and address them. Intend and invite people to accept you as you are. Embrace and accept all that you are. Be your natural self. And gradually, people around you will love you and cherish you for being who you are. I intend and invite others to give me and all my attributes a special position in their heart. Yes, common theme, exactly. The message is so close to what we just did. Beautiful. I intend and invite others to give me and all my attributes a special position in their heart. I intend and invite others to give me and all my attributes a special position in their heart. I intend and invite others to give me and all my attributes a special position in their heart. Does that feel okay, everyone? Feel settled?
My sides of stomach, like ribs, are paining, hurting.
Okay. So you want to add the word honor here. So I intend and invite others to honor me and my attributes. I intend and invite others to honor me and all my attributes. I intend and invite others to honor me and all my attributes. I intend and invite others to honor me and all my attributes. Okay. So if everyone's feeling okay, I think we can end the meeting. If anyone has anything to say, let me know. Next Wednesday, we will not be having the group healing. We will meet next to next Wednesday, please. Yes, so we'll meet on the 30th now. Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much.